D to E.
So you're
That's
just
all I'm
using
doing.
your thumb.
All I'm doing is my thumb first, but I'm still then muting this. So it's a D, hammer on to E, and then just a click.
Yeah.
And then this note here, which is a D, or pop. So I'm putting those two somewhere in, and that's for the musician to get creative.
What finger are you popping with?
Okay,
then?
so then I'm doing my index finger. I've seen a lot of guys use either or.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really cool when you use both. And then a really slick trick, which I can't do, I've seen guys use the thumb down and up.
Oh,
So it's
nice,
a double
okay.
bang for your buck. So by the time you add all those, and then another really neat trick is if you mute to play, you can get a triplet with almost no
I've
work.
seen guys do that with the pop too, where it's like, brah, brah, brah.
Right.
And I can't do it.
So that's the sort of an overview on the slapping, and what's so great about bass. By the way, bass is the coolest instrument in the whole band. I mean, you
Well,
get
I would say guitar, but there are reasons why I think
Yeah.
the bass,
Yeah.
they decide everything, right?
Right,
So-
absolutely. It's the foundation, it's the percussion, it
Yeah.
holds down the fort. It really does. And so, with that being said, to use these different techniques, a guitar pick on a bass line versus fingering, sure. So, sounds completely different. Muted,
Yeah.
muted pick. Okay, and then some people play a little bit with their thumbs, walking with one finger. So you've got slapping, your fingers, a pick, all of the
Yeah.
above.
And I
muted.
think a good
Yeah.
thing on bass to practice too is if you're just sitting on one note, use your first finger and your second finger and just kind of alternate them. So maybe your bass on just a little bit of scale.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, right.
So that's a bit on like the technique and different options, slapping, using your thumb, using your two fingers, using a pick, and they kind of all have different uses and reasons why you'd want to use each of them. A lot of guys are against playing with a pick at all on the bass. I don't think that's wise. I think that there's often really great opportunities. You get a little more driving sound with the pick and that sort of thing too. So
Yeah, style of music. One of the things too, as we're going to go into a little bit next, is with regards to developing bass lines. There's just the tonic note, which is the what's hold down the chord, the base of the chord, and so if you were playing an E minor, for instance,
E minor chord.
yeah. So of course the simple thing is you just play this maybe to even eighth. But the beauty is to think outside the box, and a lot of times that's what the drums are doing. So you're listening to the kick drum.
Yeah.
He could play the same E chord at the same tempo. And it's a whole different feel.
That changes everything. All right, now go up an octave to like a higher E. Again, something simple changes everything. Now mixing it up higher, higher octave. And that's just one chord. How about, let's go between E minor to A minor.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, what I started to do there is put a passing note between E and A, throw a G in. That always sounds cool. Run up or run down.
And where do you pick those notes? I mean, were you just doing it randomly? Were you using your ear? Were you using your theory knowledge?
That's where it's good to know your scales. Of course, if you do a passing note quick enough, it almost doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right?
What note it is, yeah.
That's why a lot of times you could. I mean, you know what I mean? So you can use notes out of the scale.
Or even one of my favorite bass lines. Let's say you're on a G.
Right.
Yeah, so you keep that going up. And up to the C, and you do the same thing. So the C. Yeah, back to G. That's just a little chromatic thing. There's lots of ways you can vary that. You don't have to get that fancy. You can just do like when the night has come.
Absolutely.
Just little simple stuff like that.
And on those, I believe you can almost never go wrong just using the first and fifth. So anytime you're anywhere and you don't know what to do, you're A, you've always got the fifth. Fifth is in pretty much every chord.
Yeah.
Which is the same note again.
And if you don't know the fifth or even what that terminology means, go back to that shape we talked about earlier, which was just using your first finger and then your third finger up on the next string. So you're playing the first, the root of the A chord, and then the fifth of the A chord.
And there's whole Latin music
Oh, yeah.
that's based on just the
Yeah.
first and the fifth.
Or
But
even country
yeah.
does the same thing.
backwards though.
Or forward.
Or
Ding.
you know. You mean like this? Well,
Like that. Like that, yeah.
right.
Or my favorite. It's a very Latin jazz sound.
Yeah. So the fifth, the octave, weave those in, and then to know what key you're in, then allows you to really expand the bass line. So if you were in E minor and the tonic note's E, and then you can, and then it goes to a G, and so you're cognizant of where to hold down the fourth and where to then be free to.
And holding
move
down the
around.
fourth, you mean stay on the root?
You always have to hold down the root.
Hold down the root, okay.
Yeah, it'd be like a drummer, not all of a sudden not using his kick drum or snare.
Yeah.
Somehow you gotta come back to those. Doesn't mean you always have to be there.
Right.
But you have to come home once in a while.
That's good.
So,
All right, let's tell us a little bit more about just theory and the easy theory stuff. So you mentioned a couple scales to learn. What's a
Right.
good way to practice those and just start to hear the pitches
right.
almost?
Well, I think the beauty of guitar and bass guitar is when you learn one scale, you know all 12. With
Yeah.
keyboards, I've always felt sorry for keyboard players because now you really got to learn
All the
all the
scales.
different scales.
Yeah.
With guitar, you get to learn one scale, whether it's a minor scale or a major scale.
Right.
So those are you only have to learn those two scales, and then they just ascend up or down. And then, if you know an A minor, then you get to just move it up and down
To B minor, C minor.
Yeah, so you know everything. So it's where you start, A minor. If you want to know it in A flat minor, you just do the same thing up or down.
So then A minor would be, and A flat minor would be.
Exactly.
Yeah, my favorite part about guitar and fretted
Yeah,
instruments in
right.
general.
So it's worth the time to learn the minor scale and the major scale. You only have to learn it 2 scales,
Yeah.
and then you know everything. And so
Yep. There's
translate
different
that
ways
to
play
keyboards.
that.
You got to learn that 24 different
Yeah,
ways.
24.
Right. So
All right, so let's move on. Just talk about knowing your role in the band as the bass player, because I've met some incredibly talented musicians, especially bass players, guys who are technically faster than me on guitar. These guys can rip and shred on the bass. But I think knowing your role in the band is so important. And if you know your role, you can actually be a pretty beginner or starting out bass player and do just as great as a pro player.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So how does the bass find the groove of the song? We've already talked about the tonic note, but
Right.
now let's talk more about the percussion piece of that groove.
Right. So first I want to talk to you about the wisdom in what you say, because as I played with a lot of drummers, when you first hear a drummer learn, they're learning just a standard beat.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start learning all the different fills, and at some point they're so far off they forgot the beat. And then you listen to the top-notch drummers, they're back to a beat.
Back to just a beat.
It might be a cooler beat.
Right.
But so at some point, as we're talking about these runs and everything, if you're not as we talked about, holding down the fort, you're doing more damage. So I'd rather always be in a band with somebody that's just holding down the tonic note, not doing much, because the music still is there.
Less is more.
Right, in that case.
Yeah.
So really then, it's, in my opinion, it's to really work with the bass player. What's happening in the drums? Where's that kick drum? Where's that snare? And those two work together, because it doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be in the pocket or the groove. So that would be my opinion. What's your opinion on how to develop those?
Yeah, so the drummer and the bass player kind of go hand in hand in the band. So if the drummers groove in something simple, often the main part of the bass riff will be something simple too. So if the drums are, that's just like a nice simple backdrop. You could play something very beginner or simple on the bass, or you could even get a little bit jazzy on it. But the thing is the band's not just about drums. It's not just about bass. You might have 20 or 30 other instruments to put in there.
Right.
At minimum, you probably have a guitarist and a keyboard player. If you're in a church band, you might even have an acoustic guitar, 2 electrics, a keyboard player, a piano player. You have to create space for those.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not about showing, how awesome you are or your level of technique. It's really just about knowing your role.
Right.
And you can play one note. And if you listen closely to music, you're listening to recorded music by incredibly talented musicians. And sometimes on the keyboard, they're just hitting an octave note on the chorus, and it's something simple. You don't have to follow all the jazz changes.
Right. Yeah.
An equivalent of that on guitar might be if the groove. Let's groove in E minor again, real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4. If the guitar player playing this riff and the bass player playing that, maybe another guitar player. I'm not even moving my hand, just kind of playing a little percussive riff. It's really vibrant and jams.
Right.
Yeah, and then you're able to take more room
Right.
on the bass and
Right.
kind of groove a little bit harder. And then that might switch another
Sure.
time, and I'll go back to something like and all of that time at least, we were going to A minor a minute ago,
Right.
but all of that was just on E minor, and that's
Right.
That's what the greats like
It's
Stevie
fun.
Wonder
It's
did.
really
They just
fun.
took something
Yeah.
simple,
Yeah.
found the right pocket. I'm thinking of the song Superstition,
Yeah.
and just found that right pocket, and there you go, a timeless song.
So my favorite things in any bass line is timing, maybe a slide down,
Yeah.
maybe even you can do little bends.
yeah. If you don't put bends in the right place, it's going to sound like you hit a wrong note.
Right.
As where the slide's pretty safe.
Right. You can always do a slide.
Yeah.
Slides are always great, saying, "Hey, I'm coming in."
Yeah. Don't do more than 4 slides a song.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
do
don't
more than
overdo
4
it.
slides a song, something's wrong. Save them for the chorus, going into the chorus. 2, 3, 4.
Right. And there's a time to be busy too. So sometimes a great bass line will start out a song, or it'll be in the bridge or something. But there's a time to back off and give room for the vocals and
Yeah.
harmony and all
That's
that
good.
kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Wow, cool. So really, this was just a quick little overview. Hope we gave you some good tools to use just as you explore the bass a little bit more. So.